Welcome to the Zachrilege Cast podcast, YouTube video, interview program that features me talking to some of the best and brightest in the atheist slash secular slash awesome community. This is episode number 132, and I'm recording live on February 20th, 2018. I would like to thank Chrisiosity for joining and crossing the YouTube slash podcasting Rubicon. Every time you debunk Jordan Peterson and SJW gets their wings or something. Tonight, I bring on two gingers who snap. Trust me, the jokes are not getting any better from here, dear listeners. Starting around the time we decided to let a complete nincompoop become president, the Ginger Snaps started their podcasting journey. They survived the harrowing trip to Podunk Polymath and finally decided to be interviewed again. Welcome, Amy of Minnesota, still a fake place as far as I'm concerned, and Nadya of Utah, otherwise known as the social justice enchantress who can science the fuck out of a mom joke. Welcome aboard.
Wait, did he say best and brightest? Why are we?
I was going to say, why are we here? We've completely killed your tagline.
You're on. Therefore, you qualify. I'm sorry.
Thank you for having us.
You can debate how high is the bar you're, crawling over, but you're there. So there you go.
So we haven't knocked the bar off. We just kind of like slumped over it somehow.
Yeah. It started teetering, but it stayed there. So that's good. It was almost. So my so out of context quotes for Amy. This is the original, I believe, title of your podcast, A Science and an Interview Idiot. And we're all fucking perverts. And Nadya's greatest quote of all time, go fuck yourself, Chris.
Oh, I was going to say that. I forgot. Go fuck yourself, Chris, if you're listening. Missed you.
So, Amy and Nadya, I'll let you fight amongst yourselves.
We're good at that.
How did this great show get started? Although I see Amy seems to be paused right now.
Uh-oh.
Unless she's doing her mime impersonation, which is not good. Yeah, we lost. We lost Amy, but Amy's back. I love it. Technical difficulties 3 minutes in. That's good. That's a record, by the way.
That's a trademark of the Ginger Snaps podcast. So I think that
cool.
You have been christened with our luck.
Yeah, my computer just froze, so fuck it, I'm on my phone. Sorry. Oh, wait, can we swear?
3, 2, 1. Yeah, you're good. I wouldn't invite you on a show where you can't swear, right? I mean, come on.
I should have asked before I swore, but I was kind of pissed off at my computer, so...
Well, you missed me saying go fuck yourself, Chris, so I guess that makes sense.
Well, I mean, we have to say that every time we're on somebody else's show because it is what it is.
It is true. You have a brand. But how did the Ginger Snaps begin? And how did you two meet cute?
So we met through a mutual friend. I ended up being a floating head during a D&D session that...
Not literally.
No, actually, quite literally. I was the only person that wasn't in the room. I Skyped into the gaming session. So I was a face on an iPad.
You can imagine that some people might picture Amy as a floating head as a character in the game.
Well, I mean,
just trying to clarify for our audience.
No, it's not. It's not our audience. It's Zach's audience, but
the audience listening to us.
It's your audience now. They're all going to leave me and come flocking to you. It's okay. I'm used to it.
Cool. I made just about. There was a well, to be honest, Nadya and I clicked because there was a straight white dude in the session amongst a bunch of queer people.
Oh yeah, and always ruining the party.
Well, my goal was to make that dude as uncomfortable as I possibly could because he was like, "Oh, I'm cool and I'm, all about, I'm with you." And so I was telling the worst and most awful jokes that I could come up with, and everybody thought they were funny. And I don't ever know if I did make that dude blush, but Nadya and I got along after that, and I put up a post on my Facebook, like, "Hey, I want to start a podcast because the world is shit and I want to talk about it." And Nadya raised her hand.
And for some reason, she decided that I would make a good co-host for some reason. Go figure. But we spent probably, 2 or 3 months kind of like meeting every once in a while and talking about show ideas and where we wanted to go. And then we finally recorded our first show.
Yeah,
And
we
so-
actually did pre-production and planning. I know it doesn't sound like it, but that's all intentional. I promise. I promise all the.
It sounds very natural.
Yeah, it was all scripted and planned out. But yeah, we did about 2 months of just trying to figure out how to do things and what we wanted to say and how we wanted to say that, and it grew kind of from there. Although I do want to say that I initially wanted to call the show "A Scientist and an Idiot," but Nadya didn't like being called names, so we went with the ginger snaps instead.
Oh, so funny. So funny.
I am funny. No, I'm not the funny one.
You're the something.
Insulting with a side of self-deprecation.
Aside. This is a plateful.
Aside.
So
that's
tonight,
true. A generous helping of.
Because I need beverage help, I'm drinking a Burial Bolo. Very pretty cans. This is a brewery out of North Carolina. So this is a coconut brown porter. I was joking with Amy that I only had 3 different kinds of coconut porters because I'm a beer aficionado, and I believe Amy is as well. One of my 3 friends on the Untapped Beer app. So what do you have this evening?
Let's see. I have from the Left Hand Brewing Company, a Black Jack Porter. It's not really, I don't really dig the label, and it's a porter. It doesn't really jump out at me, but it also doesn't make me gag. So, I mean, there's that. But I mean, it's a good representation of a porter. It's nice and dark, but I mean, it's okay. Porter's not my favorite beer, but it is dark and gloomy, just like me in my life. So I do enjoy it. And I've had
stuff.
Porters, then why are you drinking one right now?
Because I like to have different things, especially on the Untapped app, which I have as well, because you earn badges, and there's no better way to make you feel better about your alcoholism than earning badges on a social media app.
Fair enough.
See what you're missing out there in Utah?
I mean, I like some beers. They just too filling, and they don't get me drunk and fast enough. So I like either cocktails or wine.
Well, I believe there's a beer called Big Bad Baptist. It's out of Utah, but you probably have to go to a brewery to get it, and it's a barrel-aged stout, which is in the
Oh, that sounds good.
They're above the 10% range, so you might like it, but you do you, as they say.
Well, you can get above 3.2 beer if you go to the liquor store, but it's only state-run liquor stores. They don't have any mom and pop shops or anything like that. So the beer at the grocery store is only 3.2.
And it's all macro brews. It's nothing good.
They even have Guinness, though, so that's always a positive.
Guinness is a macro brew. I
understand that, but it's just they have Guinness there, so that's a positive.
So yeah.
So yeah, we're not gonna make fun of anybody's beer taste tonight, except maybe one person on the show. So have you from the start of the show? Have you been pretty much going by your schedule? Is it every 2 weeks? Is that correct?
Yep. Every 2 weeks. We wanted to do more, but we're both kind of busy people, so we couldn't do weekly. That's one of the things we discussed before we actually released a show. So yeah, every 2 weeks. We kind of wish we could do more, but we have adult lives, unfortunately. We have the adulting to do. Especially Nadya, who is a lot busier than me, but
I'm a lot what?
Busier? You're a lot busier.
Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe.
Killing mice and squishing cockroaches.
Don't tell me that. I like mice, and occasionally I have to do terrible things.
For science.
For science, in the name of humanity.
But what made you to decide to go public with your show? Because you actually said you took some time. Like, I just screw it, just record a show and did it. But you actually like prepared. But what made you decide? When did you decide you were ready, or do you think that might happen in the future?
I think that's Amy's meticulous planning. That
it's complete. That's what I was going to say. It's completely my fault because I am. Yeah, I'm meticulous. I want to have the best sound. I want to have the editing and the flow down before we do it. I like show notes. I like preparation. I like having everything timed out. Being live scares the crap out of me because I know I can't like go back and edit it, or I can't, think of my thoughts before I even put it down on paper before the show, weeks before the show comes out. On top of that, neither one of us had equipment. Neither one of us had mic. Neither one of us knew how to do any audio engineering. We didn't know how to edit. We didn't know how to record. So we had to figure out all those things. Plus also set up a rough format. And then I think the biggest reason that we wanted to do a podcast or even publish it or even get it out there is that, we're two trans women who with unique perspectives in the world coming from separate backgrounds and certainly in separate, very different professions, one being in a cool profession and the other one being me. But we both kind of have a love for educating and getting information and for science and skepticism and curiosity and for telling really shitty jokes and swearing a lot. Why not make that kind of attitude public?
True. And so how many times can Nadya make fun of Emmy's education on the show?
I don't make fun of her education.
As much as she wants.
As much as she wants.
I will never make fun of someone because of their educational background. That's part of the thing that I like, though, is education in which I think it just comes naturally. I like working with people or students and stuff like that with my job. So naturally, it would be something that I'd have a passion for, is educating people on things like trans issues. My mom has actually learned quite a lot about me from my podcast. So that's kind of an interesting aside. But I think both of our goals is just to make sure that we have a place where people can learn a little bit more about it, about trans people and then science in general, and have some fun with it, and maybe help maybe a trans woman struggling with their identity, hearing others talk about it. There's a wealth of trans podcasts out there now, but I know when I was struggling with my identity, there wasn't very much to choose from that I could find.
Yeah, by wealth you mean like 6, but
half a dozen. You're getting up there.
Yeah, I noticed there that you really just called me your student, Nadya. Sorry, I have to plug in my phone. I just realized that it's almost dead. But yeah, I think you just called me your student.
I didn't literally call you my student.
Yeah, I think you did. You said, "Well, you like working with students, and you work with me, so I think you just called me your student."
I meant in my personal career. Thank you very much. I wasn't talking about you.
Yeah, I don't think we have to put words in Nadya's mouth. I think we're gonna get just plenty tonight as we.
I'm
advance.
good enough at making an ass of myself to begin with, so we don't need to embellish anything.
Fine. Fight about it later.
Well, being a woman and atheist is one thing. That's not fair. And then being a trans woman and atheist, are you sure God doesn't exist and isn't playing a cruel joke?
I was actually thinking something like that, not whether God exists or not, but I was in rural Wisconsin today for my job, and there was this, I was in the middle of fucking nowhere, And there was this little billboard out in a field, and it said "smile," and you couldn't read the rest of the text until you got up close to it, and then like, "Smile, your mom was pro-life," and I'm like, oh, fuck that. Because if my mom was like, how much better would her life, and if I didn't exist, how much better would I have been? Because I wouldn't have lived this crappy life. So I was thinking about that. What if? But it doesn't matter because God doesn't exist and time machines don't exist, despite how much I wish a TARDIS would show up right now. It doesn't happen. It doesn't occur. So
I would try to imagine like the amount. This actually came up last week. The fact that people just went insane when there was a female Doctor Who.
Yeah,
female and trans. Would that be the next step?
Well, I mean, I contend that since the Doctor and the Time Lords all of the Time Lords can just change their sex whenever they regenerate, because there is a little bit of choice to it, a little bit of will to it, that they're all just kind of trans anyway. So I think we're just trans women and trans men and non-binary people, and everybody else are just closer to Time Lords and perfection than the rest of you.
Yeah, I've always thought that in a lot of ways I have accepted the kind of factory settings. White straight male, pretty much got it made. The only way I screwed up was not believing in God. Could have hit the jackpot. It would have been perfect.
Well, you can hide one of those.
True. I pass well.
Yeah, the straight part, but yeah, I don't know. That's another reason I think it's important for trans creators, period, to be out there, especially in the kind of secular world, because we're women podcasters or atheist writers or secular, writers and creators are in the vast minority. So I think that's another reason. It's a big reason to us why we got out there. We wanted to kind of add our voices to the choir to show that there are more than two, more than four, and that not everybody in the community is a white, straight, cis male. And it helped.
Just kidding.
Well, I mean, don't be, no, don't. Well, you are the worst, but we still need you because there's more of you than there are of us. So we still need you to kind of, to back us up, and, we need to borrow your power is just like what I'm saying. I just need the ring of power for just a little while.
Just a taste.
The power of mediocreness or whatever.
Mediocrity.
Nothing like a confident, mediocre white man, something like that.
Mediocrity would be a step up for me. So I'm definitely cool with that.
Well, that's not true. And that's what everybody's going to find out during this show. They go, wow, these two are amazing. I don't know what they're talking about. So there you go.
No, I'm not wearing pants. So
you don't wear pants? What?
Well,
who wears pants to podcast? You can only see me from the neck down, which is important.
Yeah. At all. So I mean, the fact that I have clothes on at all is pretty good.
Unusual.
Unusual. Well, it's true when you say radio only. I mean, you can be wearing whatever
or nothing. Depends on the weather. I mean, but I lived in a house that didn't have air conditioning and it was 100 degrees outside. I probably podcasted half naked. I'm just saying.
Gross.
Just half. Gross. Wow.
Thanks for that. Oh
no!
You're getting the positive stuff, and then you're like,
100 degrees is gross. Not you. Thank you very much.
Well,
stop putting words in my mouth.
You didn't. Well, I'm not putting words in your mouth. That was the whole timing. That was a perfectly acceptable leap to make, given the flow of the conversation there.
Okay, Evil Knievel, get your Racket Psycho out. Because you're jumping over.
Is that a euphemism? Are you? What are you talking about there? I am not making jumps.
I noticed that a lot of Nadya's like cultural references are definitely 70s and 80s. Like there's a reference to I think the Three Amigos in one episode, which
wasn't that 90s?
Nobody I think enjoyed the movie, but everybody quotes it still.
You Amigos. There's nothing wrong with that.
Was the Three Amigos the 80s or the 90s? It was either early 90s or late 80s.
On the verge, yeah. But nobody wants to take credit to the 90s, even though I tend to listen to a lot of 90s music just because.
It's funny because I'm older than her, and she's making references from my childhood when she was, just a wee tot. So I don't know.
I guess I watched a lot of reruns when I was little. My humor came from Looney Tunes when I was a kid. What are you talking about?
I don't know what I'm talking about. Well, I think it predates a lot of us.
I know. I'm just saying. It's funny that
a lot of people's understanding of science comes from Looney Tunes too. So you think you can run over the edge of the cliff, and then you're like, you can look down and wait for a few seconds before you fall. Yeah. Was that Looney Tunes Roadrunner? I don't know.
Yeah,
there's just a couple people. There's a couple people in office. I wish they would try that experiment. I don't wish harm on anybody, but I'm just saying that they should try that. See what happens.
Try it. Now, I've heard from people who are atheists who grew up and didn't believe and thought they were like the only person in the world. Was that an experience you had growing up? Because that's right. I listened to episode 1. And you talked about kind of your backgrounds, about when you figured out that you were trans, and in both your cases, it was like at age like 5, but you didn't really come out until decades later. So, what was it like to grow up like that and kind of feel alone and different?
Go ahead, Nadya.
As far as atheism goes, or is that
trans?
I mean, either, but trans, you got expertise, so go for it.
Well, it was funny because I came to terms with not believing in God a lot sooner than I did coming to terms with being transgender. For most of my life growing up, I tried to bury those feelings deep and pretend like that was never going to come back, and I could just forget it in the past. But as far as my atheism goes, it was through my protesting going to CCD, because I was raised Catholic, that I eventually got away from going to church on a regular basis. And it was that point that's like, my mom's actually very kind about my religious exposure, and while she fought with me to make me go to church and all that stuff, she kind of gave up as soon as I started fighting back about it, and then she just kind of let me do my own thing. As far as being trans goes, it was a lot harder struggle, and there's a lot of other factors to deal with. Including relationships I was in, and then my career, things like that. And it was a lot scarier to go that plunge, just because so many other things were riding on it, and there's rampant discrimination in workplaces today that can be geared towards trans people. So it took a lot longer to come to terms with it from my aspect.
So I mean, I knew I was different. Didn't like being called a boy. I knew I was a girl at a very young age, and I actually vocalized that. And when I did, it was met with a lot of shame and anger, which just kind of started a long path of emotional and physical abuse throughout my entire life. But as a child, I mean, I didn't have any words for it, of what I felt. All I knew was bad from my earliest memories. How I felt was bad, and it was wrong, and it was something that you didn't tell anybody. So I tried very hard to fit in with the boys and in the masculine culture, and it's still something I still don't fully understand. I never really blended in well with that, but it was basically the first 3 decades of my life was just wearing a complete and utter costume that was created from when I was very, very young, 4 or 5 years old, from the first time that I said I should have been born a girl. And just playing that role of somebody else in my entire life. And it was extremely, I don't know how to put it into words. It's very, you feel isolated, you feel alone, you feel fake. And then there's still nothing you can, you can't, you see no way out. Because you also know that I knew rather that if I brought this up again to my family, that the support would not be there. The understanding would not be there. It would not be a conversation. It would be something else, in which when I finally did come out, that's exactly what happened. My parents were beyond not supportive. But at the same time too, when I finally did come out, kind of expectation is that, your life, it's going to be better and you're going to be happier. But I've spent almost 10 years trying to deconstruct all of that facade that I had built up to find out who I really am. And a lot of that, I think, parallels with some deconversion stories and some other things, because you kind of don't live how you want to live or how you feel. As far as religion goes, though, my family was never really religious. My dad's side of the family was Mormon. My mom's side of the family was Episcopalian, which is the blue Christians. I don't know why, but my parents themselves were fairly conservative when it came to, extremely conservative when it came to like homosexuality and transness and stuff like that. So it didn't go well for me, but I never got baptized. I never went to church. I could say that I was probably a believer when I was a child because that was the default. As an adult, I got into like polytheism instead of monotheism. I was into like neo-paganism, especially Norse neo-paganism. And I got out of that too, but that was all that stuff was gentle to come out of, because it wasn't as integral as the issues that I had with gender. But even those things, even when I tried to be a cool Viking, a neo-Viking, those were ways that I tried to be extremely masculine and then fell at. And then eventually, when I was in college, I learned what critical thinking it is and rational thought, and I just slowly went away from all the gods and goddesses.
Yeah, I guess people always think of like getting rid of one god, and then, well, what about the rest, You didn't give them a chance.
Well, the religion I was involved in had quite a few gods and goddesses, so you got to get rid of them all. And it's a lot longer of a breakup conversation when you have more than one god to break up with. And it's a lot more voicemails, a lot more emails, a lot more apologies. But, it's worth it. Well, because the breakup is good and you can move on to something better.
I wonder what's less acceptable in this culture, being like polyamorous or being like polytheist, having multiple gods. Of course, goddess, because the Christian church definitely was like, any female crap, no, we're going to kill that. That's got to go. So
I would have to bet probably polyamory is probably the worst one according to religious people.
That would be worth asking. So speaking of tasting the rainbow, what are titty Skittles?
Oh, they're right here.
Well, I wasn't expecting that.
They're little green. Oh, I'm gonna get one out. I'm gonna because I can move my camera. Oh yeah. This, can you see it? See that little green pill? That is a titty Skittle.
There you go.
Me?
Camera's having issues.
Me? That's a titty Skittle. That's a nickname that trans women have for estradiol tablets, which of course estradiol is estrogen. That's what it creates in the body, and that gives you the secondary sexual characteristic secondary sexual characteristics. This is why we don't do live radio.
Three,
Of
two,
the
one.
female, huh?
3,
No,
2, 1.
You're supposed to go Van Damme, and then she loses her shit.
Van Damme. Oh, I fucking lose my shit.
Uh-oh.
Van Damme, Amy. Van Damme.
Ah, fuck you.
I don't even know where that came from.
I can tell you two get
Just
along well.
Just remember, Nadya, I have so many samples of your voice that I can literally edit you saying
you can
anything.
Make me say anything.
So that's not what it is to be in charge. Not mutually assured destruction in this case.
I would never do that. Never.
It's all right.
What is the transition like from saying, okay, was not born the gender that I feel like I am, to actually going to the taking pills? Because I know you have to go through a lot of steps.
Well, I had to.
And I know it's really easy.
A lot more than
it's like a vending machine.
Nadya went through quite a. Well, I can tell you that Nadya went through a lot less steps than I did because we fell under different guidelines. I went through the old guidelines when I first came out. What it's like, I don't know what it's like. I don't know. I mean, it's fun. I mean, everybody. It's like being a regular woman in the world, except nobody will fuck you and everybody wants to kill you. I mean, but you still, your opinion still isn't heard. Your opinion still isn't heard. I mean, I don't know. The standards I went through, you had to go through gender therapy, and then you had to have the real life experience for a year before you could get a prescription for hormones, which means you basically had to cross-dress in the world and try to work and live like that. And it was
living like a guy is cross-dressing, Amy.
Yeah, I know, but it's a lot harder, and you don't have to do that anymore. You can go through the therapy, or you can even do what's the word, informed consent for hormones, and just get them.
And that's it, just in the state of Utah. It varies state by state.
Yeah, I mean, and by doctor and by agency, there's supposed to be standards, but it is kind of wildly different. But I mean, I started hormones, 6 or 7 years ago in May. What number am I on? Do you remember?
What's that anniversary called?
Trying to reverse a birthery.
Trans rebirth anniversary.
So what do you get for like when you're in an anniversary? It's like after a year you get like wood, and then it's like paper. What's 7 years?
C cups.
C cups. Okay.
Did I get mine already?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good. We should come up with that scale, though. We really should. I never thought of that, but we really should. And it should be in the form of food, fuel, and jewels and treasures. So we actually have money as trans people. Mm-hmm.
Your fifth year, you get like a nice tiara or something like that. And
I was thinking gold
nice
bar.
Nice
gold bar. Yeah.
Like giant bar of gold, like
not
like
giant,
that?
not like cartoonish giant, like a regular bar of gold. I mean, let's not be greedy, Nadya.
Yeah.
I mean, why do you want a gold bar? I mean, I guess it's a standard. Because I'm secretly a fucking dragon. That's why. It all comes out.
It all makes sense now.
It does. It really does.
Well, you're in Minnesota, so you're an ice dragon, right?
Well, yes, but I'm also a ginger, so.
Ginger
dragon? Snapdragon? We'll just call you a snapdragon. She's a lovely flower.
I heard snatch dragon. I don't know why.
Boy.
I don't.
Or that too.
Well,
I mean,
Nadya was the first
Could you imagine?
reference. I think she used the term fire muff, and that was the first time I did that on a podcast.
You know what my day is?
Did I say that?
My day right now, my day for the past week has been I'd be doing my job on the road, and my messenger would go off, and I would look at my phone, and it's Zach on Facebook Messenger with some fucking quote I don't remember. Like today it was,
gosh.
what was it today? It was
Fuck that dialogue with the squirmy stick.
yes. I open the message and I'm like, it just says fuck that dialogue with the squirmy stick, and all I can say for the past week is like, are you quoting me? Because it sounds like you're quoting me.
That's what I like to do, is to torment people with their own words.
Oh, good.
That's how I definitely don't make a living.
And the problem is I don't remember all these like weird and fun swears that I've come up with in the past year of doing this show. So I have to sit there and think back, like, well, when did I say that? Sounds like something I would say, but when exactly did I say that?
Well, that was episode 18. That was your movie review.
Oh goodness.
And I like that you did like a trans kind of movie review, because in a way, like, my wife used to work in the legal industry, so anytime there's a courtroom scene, she can tell me like, okay, that never happens. In a movie, when you have trans characters, that you definitely are like, okay, here's my experience. And who made that up? Especially people who are trying to do a trans positive kind of movie, which doesn't happen. You know, I was thinking, and I'll shut up and ask a question at some point. Netflix did a really bad Madeleine Murray O'Hair movie, and it made me sad, because it's like, you know how often an atheist gets portrayed in film never well, and that was so bad. It's like, it's going to take 20 years to overcome that. So what is it like? I mean, maybe you could talk about the movie you reviewed and why it meant so much to you. Because for a while, it was like, it was hard for me to tell, like, do you like it? Do you not like it? Because you were being critical, but also it was clearly something that you both enjoyed.
Well, I mean,
that wasn't a question. I suck at that.
You can like something but still be critical about, how it was made subjectively and objectively, right? You can be objective about how a film is made or how it's scripted or pacing and stuff like that. You can also be subjective on how it made you feel. There's two different things. The movie that we were talking about in episode 18 was Boy Meets Girl, and it's a movie that we both actually love, despite my earlier quote. I do actually like the movie.
Angry vocalizations.
Well, I mean, at the very end of the episode, I say it like, no, because I had issue with some of the parts of the movie, obviously. But no, I don't think any portrayal is going to be exactly what I expect of it, because I kind of live the world. I view the world through the lens of my own experience, and I'm biased in that manner. However, I've seen a lot of movies with trans characters, or tried to have a trans protagonist, that are just fucking awful. Like The Danish Girl, or Trans America, or Transparent, or fucking any of them that have cis actors as the trans character. And there's very few that have not only a positive view of trans people, meaning they're not the murder victim, they're not the sad, lonely person.
They're not Ace Ventura, Pet Detective.
Oh, fuck that movie with the Anyway,
with an
I hate that movie so much.
Same.
But that's a good example of whether it's a cliche or where the end of the joke. And Boy Meets Girl is a really good movie for trans people, about a trans person, with a wonderful trans actress as the lead in the movie. And it's a wonderfully cute little romantic comedy. But I mean, it's near impossible to find a movie that's even slightly positive, that not only portrays us in a kind of good light or a normal light, but that also gets the minutia correct about kind of what it's like to live in this world, in such a sexually binary world. That even medicine is very cis biased and binary biased. What it's like to go through the medical part, and then even better, to find interpersonal relationships, whether they're romantic or platonic. What do you think, Nadya?
Yeah, I was going to say that this is a movie where I think one of the first times I felt like transness was normalized, and to see that portrayal was just something that was like deeply touching to me. I cried a lot when the first time I saw that movie, and I thought it was beautiful, and I thought it was really down to earth and heartfelt. But I mean, not everyone's story is like that, and that's kind of where some people get a little frustrated with it. That it's not necessarily the accurate portrayal of how most trans people go through their lives. But I think as far as movies go, I think it's something that trans people need a feel-good kind of rom-com movie in order to feel kind of normal. And I think that's what that does really well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, for all the shit movies out there, I mean, I think the reason that some of us complain about that it's not representative is because there's not enough, there's not enough points of positive portrayal for us to have that wide variety to draw from. But I mean, we have to start somewhere. And even though I had some issue with the movie, I really like the movie. I'm glad that it was made. I'm glad that it's out. And I think people should watch it. I think straight people, cis straight people, not straight people, cis people, whether they're straight, gay, or pan or bi or whatever, should watch a movie like that just to get a little more, to have a better understanding of kind of what it's like to be in a romantic relationship with a trans person versus, Pornhub version, which is where most people get their information from.
Hey, Pornhub is a reputable place, isn't it? Isn't that where you get all your statistics?
I actually did use Pornhub for some data points. Yes, I was just there for the article.
Second. What is happening here?
Yeah,
you didn't hear that
source
episode?
For what? I know. I should have binge listened to the entire.
No.
Unfortunately, I missed a few.
No, that would be a long process.
It was the episode before last, I believe. We were talking. What the fuck were we talking about? But we were talking about chasers. That's okay. Right. And I actually used Pornhub statistics as a reference for how often the word, a couple of keywords are put into Pornhub site and the geolocation. It's in the show notes.
What do you mean you didn't read the show notes and click on all the links? You come on, I thought you cared.
Some people like show notes, some people don't, apparently.
I don't. I would actually like
get into them as much as you do, but yes, I do think it's important to have them.
I want to know. I want to know because I listen to a lot of other podcasts and I go to their show notes. When they say go to the show notes and follow this link, I very well fucking go to the show notes and I follow that link. I wonder how many normal people, because I'm certainly not normal in that department, because I'm the one who writes the show notes. I wonder how many normal people actually do follow the links in the show notes. I kind of want to know.
Not me.
Not you. Well, it's 1 out of 2. It's actually that's a better percentage than usual.
I'm usually listening in a place where my hands are gloved and I can't interface with my phone. So,
hands are gloved in a good or bad way?
Just working, protecting myself from chemicals and pathogens and all that fun stuff. So it's not something I can easily flick the phone open. It's usually I just have a bunch of things.
Have you ever seen the movie Resident Evil?
Yes.
That's where Nadya works. I mean, that's what she does. She creates zombies.
It's even in an underground base underneath a mansion that has a train that goes from one point to another.
Well, it's a tram, really. Not exactly a train. It's more of a tram or a trolley. But
I wouldn't.
Tell me the difference between a train and a tram.
I have no fucking idea.
I wouldn't purposely watch Walking Dead again, but I would kind of like to watch the episodes with Nadya where they're in the CDC and they have the self-destruct button. Yeah, that's a thing.
It's
scientific. The way trans people are portrayed in popular culture. What about scientists? They're always idiots are trying to end the world, right? Man, that's just no positive role models there. I mean, you got Neil deGrasse Tyson. What else do you got?
Although I've never been to the CDC headquarters. There's several of them. There's one in Fort Collins,
just down the road.
There's one in Atlanta.
Every day.
I don't believe they have stores of fuel and generators and stuff like that to the extent. All right.
It's just like that.
Sure. They were just got in trouble for having specimens of 50-year-old samples of like anthrax or bubonic plague that the labels decayed on. They found it in somebody's office.
Don't you just get like a ball of like anthrax and just throw it around like a
ball of anthrax?
Yeah, a ball of anthrax, of course.
It's like snow. You can just pack it and then toss it around. I mean, endospores be damned.
My face. Oops. Oh well.
That's why you have gloves. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
It's kind of funny, Zach, that you mentioned it. My background in education is in criminal justice, like copping, not copping a field, but like actually like woo-woo.
Please save your pickup lines for later. Thank you. Patreons only.
But also in the courtroom and stuff like that. So I have that same kind of issue when I watch movies when they do like interrogations and interviews and going through the court process or arrests or stuff like that. I can't, because it's almost all bullshit and I can't stand it. And I often yell at the TV. So a lot of my like friends and my social groups are like, "Hey, have you seen this like cop show?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not going to watch that because I'll just."
Even I have issues with cop shows because of their goddamn DNA evidence. It's like, it doesn't work like that.
God, no. And collecting evidence, period, does not work like they portray it in the shows. Like the detective, like walking around not in a Tyvek suit and not masked in gloves and just walking around going, "Oh," and making bad puns. Like that will never fucking happen.
Dude,
never.
Did you just touch my test tubes with your ungloved hands?
You
introduced bacteria.
You're trying to say the show iZombie is an accurate portrayal of how things are in the world?
No. When you introduce zombies, especially hot zombie chicks, that is exactly how it works.
I mean, I fully expect it to be some sort of rabies type virus.
That's good to know.
Just for funsies.
If you ever get a friend who is an actual scientist, I recommend that you always ask scientific questions and get an answer from them, because every time I ask Nadya a serious scientific question, I literally get like an hour and a half explanation and I've fallen asleep and she doesn't notice. She's just still going. And I love her for that.
So just say the word chemtrails and then, yeah.
Well, we did. I once made.
I saw the face palm. That was good.
Hey, Nadya, let's talk about GMOs next episode. And her face lit up. Just, and the show notes for that. I'm like, Nadya, it's an hour-long show. You have to cut this down. But she's amazing like that. Very smart.
Oh, stop. I'm not that smart.
Yes, you are.
Don't start this here. You're not going to start this here.
We haven't talked about well-meaning problematic people in a while, so why don't we do that? So I believe you've talked about the Women's March and the intense, like, whiteness, straightness of feminism. How does that affect you when you see that portrayal?
Okay, so my big, besides trans awareness, my big causes in this world are like mental illness and stuff like that, because I have a plethora of broken brain stuff going on. But one of the biggest things is I'm like almost bordering on agoraphobia because I'm just afraid to go outside. But when you see things like the Women's March and you get inspired and they're like, hey, and you're like, I'm a girl too, I'm a woman too, I want to go out and do those things. And then you turn around and you see those same people that are like, all women, and they just turn around and look at me, like look at you, or when I say that I mean me, like trans people, trans women in particular, and they're like, oh, but not you, you don't count. That doesn't help it doesn't help you feel valid. It doesn't help you get over some of the trauma that you faced as a kid because you're forced to fill a role that you did not fit into, that you didn't wasn't natural. And I mean, you don't feel like you're part of society or any group because the one, there's overarching groups and then there's subgroups that fall under it. And you figure that we fall under the female umbrella and we'd have them as allies because, they're women. They know what it's like to have a shitty time in society and they can't even, look down at us and help us step up to be with them. And it hurts. That's what it is. That's all it's my best summary is it hurts.
Well, it's not all that surprising with how women of color still aren't getting the recognition they deserve. And also sex workers, people like that, all get left behind in white cisgender feminism. And that's something that needs to change. And I have seen some of those changes, but for some reason, the persistence of the focus on genitals is just so prevalent. And that's just something that further subdivides us into these weaker groups altogether. And that's the opposite direction we want to go. And I think that generally speaking, that if we are making more steps to be inclusive, it has to be pulling everyone up at the same time, not just kicking others down for the benefit of raising up a select few.
Especially the select few that look closest to us, because that always seems to be the thing. The more different people look from us, the less we are to include them in our in groups. And we need to get over that. I mean, we can do that as a species. We have this wonderful rational brain where we can overcome that and be like, nah, we're all good. We can all help. Even when it includes saying, oh, yeah, I've been wrong about that the whole time and I'm really fucking sorry. Now tell me how I can make it better. That's what we need to do. Get over our own shit to help out everybody else.
Well, Amy, once you were open about being trans, was it tough for you to talk about mental illness? Because you brought it up a few times in the show, and you even talked it when we were kind of chatting before the show.
I want to be more vocal about mental illness. I mean, my mental health journey has been slower than my any other path I've taken in life. I mean, I've only been in really good therapy for the past 6 months. And I mean, when I started gender therapy, when I was first starting to come out around 30, I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety and hinted at PTSD. But I mean, I kind of ignored those things because I just thought that if I got the gender shit figured out, that those things would go away. And they did for a time, to be honest. But for a very short amount of time, because trauma is not erased like that. Depression is not erased like that. Depression is a complicated physical disease, as complex as any other physical disease like diabetes or I don't know. It's not a made up thing. It has a real physical problem and deficiencies or too much or too little of certain chemicals in the brain. And it hasn't been, but for the past 6 months that I've been, about 8 months ago, I admitted to myself, I'm depressed almost all the time. And I've been depressed for almost the past 4 years. And I've just been lying to myself about, how I felt. And it's getting worse. It's not getting better. And so I went and got therapy, and it's taken a long time to get to the point where I can admit to myself that I have a lot more problems than I thought I had, that I can't fix them myself, that medication is okay to take. Antidepressants are great. They don't change who you are. They just make you feel not, bad all the time. And therapy is a wonderful thing. I mean, good therapists are a hard thing to find. And I kind of got lucky with my therapist, who is queer friendly and also an atheist and uses science-based methods versus aromatherapy to help with these issues. And I mean, that's one of the causes that I want to take up in this world is mental health awareness from the perspective of someone who suffers from mental illness. I mean, I have almost crippling social anxiety. I've gone without food because I was afraid to go outside and go to the grocery store, for example. Who has a person who's suffered from trauma, both from childhood, from my parents, from my first spouse, from my second spouse, domestic violence, assault, sexual assault, all of those things, and trying to work through trauma. If you were a patron, you would actually hear about me talk about mental health a lot more. And
hint,
wink.
hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Say no more. Say no more.
Mm-hmm. There's another 80s, 70s, 80s reference for you there, Zach.
Phew, it's been a few minutes. Every time there's a 70s reference, drink. Oh, too late.
Yep.
Oh, is that what our drinking game is?
The drinking game is anytime you talk, I drink. There you go. That's my game.
Oh, that hurts a little bit. Is it that bad to hear me talk?
No, that's the reason I did this show. It's an excuse like, oh, I'm just drinking. You guys talk. You guys talk amongst yourselves. It's good. See? If you can't get through a beer during the show, you're not even trying.
And I think Nadya can kind of mirror that whole mental health thing. Is it's hard to admit to yourself, and we both kind of have that journey. And it's important that we talk about these things and we kind of, get rid of that. What's the word? The misconceptions. Stigma. Yeah, and the stigma around mental health, mental illness. Which
it's
for shorthand,
that's probably underdiagnosed because people are afraid of the stigmas associated with it.
Well, I was just thinking, like last week, I didn't want to bring up the shooting just because it was so recent, and it's still pretty recent. But the fact that it's this othering that seems to be okay with our current administration, and just saying, "Well, it's mental illness, so we just throw it on our bus." We're not actually going to do anything about it. We're just going to call it mental illness, so we can excuse it, and we can keep just shooting the shit out of each other, and that's okay.
Well, as long as they're making their money, they don't give a fuck about us. I mean, everything about this administration is they don't give a fuck about us. And they just want to make, they just want to get theirs. But there's nothing... a lot of times when these awful things happen, there's a couple other incidences. There's even one a couple months ago in the atheist community that mental illness, it was horrible and tragic and awful. And mental illness was the first place that people went. And I'm like, hey, people might have a mental illness. They might need treatment. And yeah, we need to reduce that stigma. But I can tell you as a person with a lot of kind of bullshit and trauma that the first person I want to hurt when things are bad is not anybody else. When people are mean to me, when people try to kill me because I was either perceived as a girl with another girl or as, they wanted to come after me because I was visibly trans. When those people hurt my feelings, I didn't want to go back and hurt them. We're more likely to hurt ourselves than we are other people. That resorting to violence is not a mental health issue specifically. It's a different issue. Mental health might be comorbid in that it might let somebody set aside the inhibitions about hurting other people, but it's less of the cause than it's certainly portrayed to be. It's just people excusing that violence and speaking to their base to excuse the problem. And it's always white guys that they make those excuses for. It's not people of color or anybody else or Muslims. It's only the white guys.
You hear he's troubled. Oh, hi, white guy.
Yep.
Let me just apologize for all white guys right now. Okay, done that. Good. I feel better. I feel like we've healed as a country, which is nice. Now we have a couple people in the chat room, and they're dying to hear a joke. So who's got a good joke? And it doesn't
a joke.
Yeah.
Just any joke.
Any joke.
Any joke.
How do you stop Canadian bacon from curling in the pan?
How?
You take away its brooms.
Boom. Okay, we set
It's
the bar.
because she lived in fucking Minnesota. That's why.
I actually love curling, by the way.
South Canada.
Yeah, it is really South Canada. You gotta let Nadya tell a joke, though. There's two of us. Come on, Nadya, tell a joke. You got a joke.
I'm not good at off the
cuff joke.
Yeah. I just puns come to me, and that's how they manifest. It's only just to infuriate you more, Amy.
Are you infuriated? Well, you're like 28 episodes in on it. I would be,
I mean, that's part of the fun
of
making those puns, is because it causes Amy to roll her eyes at me
and just say out loud, you can't see that. You can't see that. You can now.
Yeah, you won't do visual humor now, will you? No, the people can see you now. You won't do visual humor. You're waiting on the fucking radio.
How do you like me now?
Hi, everybody. I didn't realize our video was live as well. I am not very informed.
It's only been 62 minutes.
No, I didn't know what that meant. So, yeah. I'm kind of a
That's what I've heard. So is there anything that I have not asked or brought up that you want to talk about in this episode?
Why?
You will be promoting your show once is done, so that'll be next.
Chris from the Podunk Polymath must fuck off. I mean, we need to know. This is in the hearts and tongues of all Americans. Nadya, why?
Should we talk about where this came from, or you want me to make up a reason?
No, I want you to make up a reason, actually.
Oh, okay.
We can make a joke about how 80% of your therapy is about the time you were on Podunk Polymath, or really isn't about anything else. You're just covering for that. Because usually when I have a guest on, he's like, I had him on first. I'm like, yeah, how many times have been interviewed since? Hello, what happened there? What did you do? What happened?
I will not say we're in the doll. I will not say that. I already did. It's because Chris is from Tennessee and he drinks microbrews. That's why he can fuck off.
He drinks beer that I would like. In fact, I
like stirring shit to get fans.
3 weeks.
Oh, wow, that's a callback. Wow.
Exactly. 3 weeks from Friday, I'll be in Nashville for the NanoCon. So that's a good question. I've been trying to ask people. I mean, I know you two, you're like 8 billion miles apart. You're like 2 episodes of Star Trek apart from each other. But
2 movies,
about 1,700 miles.
Is there a conference that you might be able to get to where the two of you can actually meet up? Of course, there's not there's all these conferences in Nebraska, whatever the midpoint is between the two of you.
That would be like the nice midpoint.
Wyoming?
Well,
if I can't get the funding for my own conferences within my field, how am I going to get the funds to go see a con like this?
We could always just have a beer con at the Raffle Studios in Wyoming. I mean, the closest con to me is Mythicist Milwaukee, and I'm not going to go to that ever. Yeah, I wish people would throw us some money, because I'd love to go to NanoCon. I'd love to go to a couple of these conferences that I've never been able to get to, but I mean, fucking poor, yo.
ReasonCon next year. Let's see if we can make this happen.
I thought ReasonCon was going to be... No, ReasonCon is 2019, isn't it? Oh, I would love to go to ReasonCon. So bad.
Why would you want to go to ReasonCon?
You would want to go to ReasonCon if... We would both want to go to
a bathtub full of beer. That's why. Oh, man.
Getting over pneumonia.
We killed.
Yeah, Nadya had pneumonia lately, so she's...
Nadya's getting over that zombie virus. It takes a few days.
Luckily, I had a vaccination for it, full of those thermosols and delicious methyl mercuries.
Yums. Yeah, I had somebody on my Twitter feed was talking about all the aluminum, and it's like, yeah, because we're all dying of aluminum poisoning for the last 40 years, because that's been a thing.
I like to pronounce it in the English way, aluminium.
Aluminium.
Yeah, it is. It is a
Aluminium.
lovely thing.
That makes me happy.
Those British.
So the Ginger Snaps, how do people find your show?
You can find us on any podcatcher of your choose, iTunes, Stitcher, what have you. Just search the Ginger Snaps. There was another show on there that's just called Ginger Snaps. We're the Ginger Snaps, not Ginger Snaps. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com, the Ginger Snaps Podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Gingers Pod. Gingers Pod, and then of course you can contact the show at Gmail with the Ginger Snaps Podcast at gmail.com with all your hate mail that we will forward to Zach and Chris.
Yes. And if you are coming from specifically this show that we're on, just send us a message saying like microbrew or something like that, so we know where you came from.
There you go. A beer darker than my soul. Only
there you go. There we go. I only drink beer as dark as my soul.
Exactly. Well, if for some reason you want to support this show, you can be like Bobby, Hugh, Teody, and Jeannie and go to patreon.com/Zachrilege, Zachrilege, and I spelled that correctly after 2 beers, so you can as well. Go to @Zachrilege on Twitter, like the Zachrilege Cast page on Facebook. Send all love mail, all constructive criticism, we'll say, potential guests, anything, to zacrilege.cast@gmail.com. I would like to thank Amy and Nadya for being on tonight. To finish the show, it's time for a little bit of lyrics from my favorite band of all time, the Be Giants. If it weren't for disappointment, I wouldn't have any appointments. Good night.